Hey everybody, Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share a comparison between the Sony FDR AX100 on the left and the FDR AX33 on the right. These are both 4K camcorders from Sony, designed to really complement one another. The AX100 was the first 4K offering, priced at $2,000 US. That was the suggested retail. You can now find this model for, I would say less, not significantly less, but somewhere between $1,500 and $1,700 on sale. Whereas the newer AX33, which is really about making 4K appeal to everyone, in my opinion, which is where Sony probably should have begun, is the winner in many ways for the mass market. I can tell you right now at the beginning of this comparison that if all you're interested in is the best quality video as well as stills that you'll get from either of these cameras, then the more expensive, more cumbersome, and poor image stabilization when compared to the balanced optical steady shot you get with the newer, smaller sensor-based AX33. Again, the FDR AX100 wins every time, especially since it did receive a firmware update that now pits it directly on equal footing when it comes to the 100 megabit data rate that the AX33 brought, which was a first. That was something where we had a cap of 60 was the ceiling here originally with the $2,000 AX100. When it comes to neutral density filters, the ability to get to things quickly, manually, basically everything prosumer, that's what the AX100 is all about. The more compact AX33 fills the gap for everyone else. Now, this doesn't mean that it's not qualified or capable also to be used by professionals, amateurs alike, because what it does accomplish incredibly well, despite its smaller sensor, still maintaining that 100 megabit data rate, of course, recording in Sony's XAVCS codec, you're going to basically have that balanced optical steady shot, which will let you, from my experience, the samples I've shot so far with this camcorder, really get video that seems like it's stabilized. And that means that even if you add a little bit of stabilization, whatever your preferred method is, you're going to get an experience that you simply can't achieve on the AX100 without a much more complex system, much more expensive system, much heavier system, which again kind of matches the profile of the AX100. Part of the reason I haven't picked it up yet, don't worry, I will. But you can see the size difference. They both work with the same battery. Battery life is close. But when it comes to the sharpness, the overall quality of video, even when this camcorder was sitting at a 60 megabit peak, it still was a better overall performer. Now, when it comes to stabilization, that is its weakness really at the end of the day, as well as when it comes to focus speed, the AX33 does benefit from having a smaller sensor. Just a quick rundown of what you have with the AX33. Of course, the display and access to pretty much everything you're going to want to do with the camera is right here on screen, touch screen. That's not going to make everyone happy, but it is the one-size-fits-all solution for Sony in this situation. You do have night shot mode, of course, playback, access to your memory. In this case, of course, SDXC, you need to have a Class 10 UHS 3 card because you need to have a high write speed in order to actually capture at 100 megabit data rate. So keep that in mind if you plan on shooting in the highest quality mode that this camcorder or the AX100 is capable of. Also, quick access to your HDMI out. This is another element that speaks to where the $1,000 that you get in this great value, in my opinion, still does not live up to what you get with the higher image quality from the more prosumer FDR AX100. You do not get a clean HDMI output on this that can be captured simultaneously. So that means that live output, basically viewing, is not a possibility. Clearly, again, defining that this is more of a consumer product than a prosumer or even higher-end enthusiast product in terms of Sony's target audience with this camera. That doesn't diminish, though, the quality it delivers at its price point, which I think is unmatched. There really isn't anything else to look at. Back here, we've got access to charging, of course, the record button right there. The OLED viewfinder is great. I would say just about almost as good as the one found on the AX100. Keep in mind, you may have noticed no sensor here, which is yet another element of where Sony is differentiating on which one is more of the prosumer product. Your rocker right here to control zoom. You can also control zoom on the ring. The only real manual button is right here, so that's another thing to be aware of. You'll see when I get to the AX100 how different the layout really is, even though they both still rely on a touchscreen. Now when it comes to the 10 times Zeiss glass that you're getting here, you can see that balanced optical steady shot, the eyeball floating around in there, and that's what the brilliance of this camcorder is all about. So even though you're giving up some extra image quality, still quality, video quality with the smaller sensor, your gain is, again, as I mentioned earlier, the ability to have incredibly smooth handheld footage. And that's because this method of steady shot, unlike the traditional one found here in the AX100, is all about accommodating your hand movement, which is a far superior approach, something Sony introduced years back, and I'm happy to see them reincorporate. On this side of the camera, you can see we've got access to your microphone as well as headphone jack, and then of course the multi-jack as well for accessories, as well as USB access. Your NFC contact point, you can live stream with this camcorder using Ustream, Wi-Fi, NFC, everything's here. You know, an ecosystem that Sony's been building. So really at $1,000, you cannot go wrong with this, but there's no question this is targeted at the average consumer, even though it's still high-end, expensive, no question, and not everybody has 4K displays to review it. But just like when HD was introduced, if you care about the longevity of what you're filming, your children, your family, your trips, you want to preserve your memories, even if you don't have a 4K display, I can't stress the value of getting something like this and having it in 4K, having the ability to pull stills from that 4K video that you would have missed even if you were shooting all day long with a still camera. And that's where the AX100 does a better job, but at a much more bulky cost, I should say. So this is a winner head to toe. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. Is there anything to compare it to right now? No, there just isn't. No remote control included with this, which is surprising. You can use your smartphone, iOS or Android, to actually control it, which is interesting. You can also mount the Sony Action Cam that I've been covering onto this as well. So it's definitely a dynamic product, more mature, I would say, than their first gen, but not higher quality, just better image stabilization, more of a compact footprint, and designed again and priced again for the rest of the real world, at least where Sony wants to set retail expectations. Now, when we bump over to the much larger, much more, I would say, prosumer-friendly model, the AX100, which now, as per their latest firmware update, which I have been using on the channel, we do get the same 100 megabit data rate as found with the newer AX33, which was a conundrum for some, how you could get a higher data rate on a less expensive, smaller sensored camera. It's just a matter of marketing, and that's why Sony, as they do with much of their DI, has not degraded a generation of older products, but rather complemented it. And I think it's a smart approach because this not only remains relevant, but still the best 4K prosumer option on the market. So yes, it will require much more stabilization than something like the compact AX33 that's really more designed for the family, as I keep mentioning, but pros can use it too. I think it's a great B cam. But if you're not stepping into the world of spending upwards of, $10,000, not that you need to, you can achieve 4K for less, that is on par with this same quality, even higher, of course. This is really still an unmatched product. You have built-in neutral density filters, something that, of course, is not existent on the AX33. You can see the switch right here, and that is critical to have for just about anyone, from the average user. I mean, someone who's going to live in auto isn't going to care about that, but anyone who knows what an ND filter is, I mean, this camera has its automatic mode to detect, so even if you don't know what you're doing, you're still going to get a benefit that simply doesn't exist with the AX33. The OLED viewfinder, again on here, is great, just like on the AX33. It also has the detector to actually negotiate whether you're using it, which is a nice added feature, battery saving feature. DC in right here, the exact same type as the AX33, your record button. You'll notice many similarities. Start and stop there. Video still mode button switch above the record button. Auto or manual switch right here on the left hand side. And there are just so many more buttons on this camera. I did not mention on the AX33 the still and or the movie and still video switch being right here. I don't prefer the positioning, but it's a more compact camera. Both of these cameras, by the way, also incorporate the hot shoe system, the multi-interface shoe, which basically allows you to accessorize as much as you possibly can in the camcorder world, especially now with mounting those 4K action cams. But obviously better for an external microphone, extra lighting, a lot of different things that generally you would need. Wi-Fi on board here, but immediately you'll see along the body all of the different buttons we have, almost also weather sealing-esque, even though it's not weather sealed to my knowledge. Your headphone jack right here, these are plastic doors, HDMI out, which by the way is clean HDMI, unlike what's found on the AX33. Control directly of shutter speed, your gain ISO, your iris, of course, the manual button, the same one found here. So that's another commonality, a similar feature, but in terms of having quick access to all of this, that simply does not exist in the AX33 world. Same dial system to control whatever you've manually set. You also have autofocus, a switch between manual and auto right here dedicated on the lens barrel, as well as a zoom focus switch for what you want the actual ring to perform. I've also noticed that the glass is superior here on the AX100. The results are superior. Everything about the AX100 is superior other than its stabilization and form factor. And that's really what it comes down to at the end of the day. If you're trying to decide between these, there's no question that even though this is the more expensive camera, it is better in every way other than the steady shot. It doesn't have the balanced optical steady shot. Maybe eventually we'll see an update to this with it. That would be an amazing piece of hardware. But this also does work with Sony's standard remotes, which I like, something that doesn't happen with the AX33. On the other side here, we have access to the multi-port as well as microphone. These are things that I just feel the layout is a little bit better on this camera than it is on the more compact AX33. But again, the AX33 is so small, that's kind of made up for in the balance, in the mix. Your focus magnifier for peaking, as well as your NFC contact point. This is fully wireless in the same ways that the AX33 is, so don't sell it short in that department. A dedicated photo button as well as a video rocker, which is definitely far superior, even though it's just another piece of plastic, folks, over this piece of plastic, in my opinion. But this is, again, form over function, even though the quality here in the AX33 is still best in class and really unmatched. Pani's offering does not stand up to this in the video quality or stabilization department. So Sony easily owns the 4K video market now, even though it may not be an illustrious one to own. It will be with time. And again, I reiterate to all of my subscribers who do have an active interest in video, get on the 4K bandwagon. Eventually you will have a TV. 8K isn't closer than you think, even though some crazy things might happen over the next year or this year. And this model is really for that person who's not willing to compromise. You're willing to carry the extra weight. You've got neutral density filters. That 1-inch sensor also makes this fully capable of being a still camera. And I'm not kidding. If you want to take 20 megapixel stills with this that are really going to get not quite as sharp, obviously, as the RX10 or RX100, but very close to those cameras, since it does share the same sensor, I have news, it delivers, and I've used this personally many times. That's part of the reason this is my go-to for the channel. It's a fantastic piece of hardware, and the AX33 doesn't knock it off the block, but it's more of a complementary model, again, to a market that really maybe never considered 4K, like the average family, because, like I said before, no TV, no computer monitor, why do you need 4K? Now with the steady shot, you have a viable option for basically everyone. And the price is going to go down on the AX33 just as it has on the AX100. The multi-interface shoe, microphone array, very similar on these two. Again, it's all about size and, of course, that image sensor size as well. With the 1-inch, you've got a bigger display. You can see it's quite dirty here from use. But even here, the button layout significantly different. Because there's a little bit more direct access to white balance, program, your power button, of course, playback, display, night shot. You don't have that. Everything is menu driven on the touchscreen on the AX33. So Sony clearly defining which product is aimed at who. It's all about the AX33 being the 4K for everyone, and not in an action cam sense. Those sensors are a joke compared to either of these. And then, the FDR AX100 being aimed at the person who isn't going to, again, blow out, doesn't have the crazy budget, but wants every feature they can get in a prosumer quality 4K offering. And that's exactly what Sony's delivered on. So I think they've got a clear path here. I would have liked, again, to have seen, and of course, access to your SD card slot right there. I would have liked to have seen the AX33 come out first. I think it would have made a lot more sense. But when you think about how 4K has been adopted thus far, not incredibly well. TV pricing reflects that. Monitor pricing, not so much, but it will with time. It's something where it's very clear to me that this would have been a better seller out of the gate. Of course, in the same vein, Sony needed some time to figure out what their roadmap for 4K was going to be, and that's what I think we see before us. The menu diving I didn't do because it's frankly identical. The key difference here is I keep mentioning lack of the form factor, the balanced optical steady shot, and of course, frankly, beyond that, the capability to have quick access to everything, and most importantly, the ND filters. And you pay for all of that. Even though both have Zeiss glass, everything will be sharper here. Everything will be a little bit more noisy here because you have a smaller sensor. But at the end of the day, I think that either is a great choice. Which you need comes down to really what you actually must have. And I think that if you must have the best quality that you can get at a reasonable price in this current field of 4K options, you're looking at it with the bulkier, again, heavier, more expensive, older FDR AX100, especially now with that firmware update because things only got better. On the other hand, you want the more quick to focus, not going to be as much of a stunner in low light, but incredible balanced optical steady shot, the type that's going to look like it's on a rig so that when you're walking around, the average person on vacation, your footage doesn't need some form of post-processing to basically not get everyone nauseous. This is a killer cam, and that's why it's going to appeal to everyone. As I've mentioned over and over again through this video, it's not a recurring theme. It's a fact. That balanced optical steady shot is like basically equating the value or building the value in of a rig, and most average people aren't going to think about that, but when they see the results that they get from what they shoot on vacation or anything, even at a commercial level, using it for corporate events, whatever it may be, the difference in quality is going to be minimal for that sort of consumer. And I think that's where the AX33 wins a much broader audience. That's why Sony would have been better off with that first gen. And I think a lot of the 2K, the 1080p camcorder owners, this is what they've been waiting for, because they weren't willing to all of a sudden go back to the early 2000s in terms of form factor, even if it meant getting the best quality. And I guess that's also why this was the first gen product. Sony knew that the only early adopters were going to want the best, not a compromise, which is exactly what the AX33 is. So hopefully that answers all of your questions. Again, this is the family camcorder. This is the prosumer one. They're priced appropriately. They use the same battery. Nothing else competes with them right now. So be assured whichever one you go with, you're getting a winner here, especially with the latest firmware updates that have addressed quite a few of the problems that at least I've had personally with the AX100. When I say quite a few, I'm not trying to scare you, but again, no product is perfect. Focus speed was an issue. That's definitely improved. Not as big a problem, I mentioned this earlier, on the smaller censored AX33. But then again, you won't have the superior still quality either. And that's where it really shows more than even the video. Even though the video is better here on the larger sensor, the stills are where you really see, again, that direct pixel readout on the video side, and then on the still side, that 1-inch sensor maturity level that just isn't in the less expensive AX33 offering. But that pretty much rounds things out. Two video imaging beasts right now for their respective price points. Again, originally 2, originally 1. This is brand new, so I don't expect to see it drop too fast. But great camcorders nonetheless. You cannot go wrong with either one, and quite frankly, I'm shooting with both, going to continue doing so because they do suit different things. You may need to carry a tripod just about everywhere, or at least a monopod, something to balance this if you take it on vacation. I'm not saying the optical steady shot won't do something. It will. It's just even I have been less prone to break this thing out on trips simply because of its size and requirements when it comes to stabilization, which means this, the AX33, even with its compromise, is a much better travel companion for just about anyone on Earth. Hope that sheds a little light on my experience between the two. Over 20 minutes, hopefully does. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. And of course, as usual, please feel free to subscribe. Later.